Hi, everybody. I'm Gretchen Zellick, and this is.
And I'm Annie Gibbons, and we're with Donuts and Pie Fitness. Thank you for following us. I believe this is going to be our very first interview, so we're so excited if you've gotten this far with us. Put on your seatbelts because it's going to be a really fun journey. As Gretchen and I have collaborated on Donuts and Pie Fitness, we've really come to understand that aging enthusiastically is not just for a few people. The more people we meet, the more we understand that aging enthusiastically is really what is driving our age group. And it's just really inspiring to get to know people across the country that have different passions and different experiences that they're sharing with us. And it's all about the enthusiasm and the passion. So we're really excited to be with Eileen Powers, who I'm sitting next to right now. I've known Eileen for about 15 years. I think we met first. She came to a running clinic that we were doing. And I've known her as a photographer and a commercial artist. And then she got this diagnosis. And I'm going to let her take over from there because we want to talk about her project and how she's gotten to where she's at right now. So Eileen.
Hi.
So glad you're here with us.
So about a little over a year ago, I was diagnosed with lymphoma, and it's been an odyssey since then. Many treatments later, here I am. I'm still relatively healthy. I still have lymphoma. I've been through 9 rounds of chemo and a stem cell transplant, and I will have a CAR T-cell treatment at the end of the month. So that's immunotherapy and additional chemotherapy. So it's been a long year and a half for me in terms of my health and trying to establish some sort of normalcy in life.
Yeah, that's big. I mean, I can't imagine.
Right, and I think one of the ways that we do establish normalcy is through our activities. And when I first developed cancer and I had to tell people about it, the first thing people want to do is they want to help you in some way, and that's natural. People want to bring you things. They want to give you flowers and cards and food. And as you progress with the illness, you grow with the illness, you grow with your circumstances. So as you change and grow with those circumstances, I think what I decided was I needed help in a different way. And after my second chemo treatment, I did begin to lose my hair. And one of the things that happens to us is, whether we're young or old, middle-aged, 20, whether you're 60, you lose your identity as a woman when you lose your hair. And it took me about 6 weeks to look in the mirror and to really take a good look and take in what was happening to me and the differences that were happening to my body. And once I did that, I became oddly fascinated with my situation. And I think that that's part of me being an artist is that I'm able to look at things different way in a lot of different ways. And I decided that this was kind of like a blank piece of paper that I could work with. So about a week after that, I started to think about, I started putting things on my head. So I started to put stickers on my head. I started to put words on my head, and I started to photograph that. As a photographer and artist, I was interested in working somehow with words and type and my head. And so in the process of doing that, I progressed to thinking that all of these people that wanted to help me and bring me food and meatloaf and, beef stew, if I gave them a project and made them an active participant in what I was doing, it would be healthier for all of us. It would be healthy for me, and it would be healthier for them to have something to do. It gave me something to do, and it gave us all something else to think about instead of my illness. So it gave us something to talk about that put us on an equal footing. And I think that's what was really, for me, illuminating about the project was that, when people make hair for me and then I make it and I photograph it, they are a participant. I'm a participant. They have conversations about making the hair with their own friends that I'm not involved with. They sometimes work with their families to make the hair. So it's beyond me. I was the catalyst, but it's an activity that other people can do on their own, and it just ends up back with me.
And the project's called Can You Make Hair for
You
Me?
Make Hair for Me, and it's on Instagram and it's on Facebook, and the website will be ready soon.
And how do you reach out to people? How do they find you?
Well, I mostly through Facebook and Instagram. People can message me if they're interested in doing it. I have a lot of friends who are artists, so they were interested in participating right away. So I had a lot of close friends who I went to art school with immediately send me hair to work with. And as the project has progressed and other people see what some of their peers have done, there's a little competition. So some people want to like outdo somebody else who they know made some hair. And then people who might not necessarily consider themselves creative, work maybe with their grandchild or something, and they make something. And that's always really interesting. And some of those are more abstract. And they're all very colorful for the most part. But, there's a wide range of different interpretations of this.
So in these photographs, you use different hair, different style. Who styles you? How do you decide what direction to go with it? Who's taking your photos? How do you get this all together to make these unbelievable photographs that you're hopefully looking at now?
So it's sort of a team approach. I'm the catalyst. So I put it out there that I might need some hair. And I sometimes will give people an idea of what materials might work, because sometimes the simplest things work the best. And I often will make some of the hair myself just to get people going. So there's a number of them that I've made. And so if somebody will mail me something, or they'll leave it on my porch, and I'll get it and I'll look at it. And sometimes it takes me 2 to 3 weeks to figure out what to do with it. On occasion you get something and you don't know what to do with it. So you have to kind of let it sit with you, and then it solves itself at some point. Sometimes you put it on your head and it's very different than what you thought it was going to be. We take some test shots. Now, I set up the camera. I know what shots I want. And then my partner, Tom, actually will click the shutter. So he is the man behind the camera at this point. But we work together, and we consider it a collaborative effort with the photography. I taught him how to use the camera. And, so he takes direction from me about how I want to be shot. Then when I have the hair, for instance, I have one that I have not posted yet that's made out of cassette tape. And it's just tape. And it's really interesting looking, and it photographs really well. So I initially had an idea of what would work with that. And so I might go to the thrift store and search for a piece of clothing that might work. I like when the heads become characters. I think they're much more successful when they are.
You can really see that in your photographs. You become that person.
Some of them are more so than others. Some of them are easier to turn into characters than others. But I do think the more successful ones are characters, and are something that people can relate to. So I work very hard to try to make them into someone. And I like when somebody's sort of doing something or gesturing in a way that we're all familiar with. So I try to find some sort of commonality. There's always, like I did one where, I was in Dunkin' Donuts on Labor Day, and this guy behind me was really impatient, and he's hanging out there, and, he's like this, and he's looking in his wallet, and he's scratching his face. And so I decided to do him, but we've all seen this person,
right?
And so I try to find those kinds of characters that we're all familiar with, and that we've seen out in the mall or on the street, or might be in our families. Or we might have worked for at one point. So
it is amazing when I look at those, how, like, I show them to so many people, because I'm a bit obsessed, I have to say. And so I'll show it to them, and we'll keep going through it. And they'll say, that is no way that's the same person. Especially when you do your male characters. Yeah. It's like you go from this beautiful, glamorous, glitzy to this frumpy, curmudgeon. Yeah. You transform. It's fascinating.
Well, what I tried to do is I started to do the male characters myself, because I wasn't getting male hair. And that's a whole nother issue, is that we still think women have to have hair. So like the first thing people think of is they send me something long and flowing, but it doesn't necessarily have to be like that. So I made one out of car mats, and I just put them on the sides of my head, and I'm sure we can, you'll
work
see
that one in,
And I decided that, I knew that person. Like, I knew that was someone that I had worked for when I was in high school. So I became that person. And I remembered how we used to dance when we worked together and what, And so, like, I just sort of adopted his posture. And in many cases, that's sort of what you're doing. And it's much easier to do sometimes the male characters than the female.
Right.
Because they gesticulate overly, I think sometimes.
Well, they're totally relatable. I mean, they really are, but they're also true art. Your photos are their art. And I know you've exhibited in Cape Cod, at Mass General. You've been interviewed for the news in Boston, and now you have an upcoming presentation called Artoma, the Art of Cancer, in Chicago. Yes. And it's January 10th to the 31st. That's January 10th to the 31st. So can you tell us about that? It's so interesting.
A friend of mine named Richard Zeid is a professor at Columbia College of Art in Chicago. And he and I both developed lymphoma at the same time. And we've been friends, went to graduate school forever ago. And so we've been friends for a really long time. And I found out that he had lymphoma. And then I developed it not long after. And so we sort of had a new bond once we both were sick at the same time. And for a while we were getting chemo at the same time on the same day.
Wow. What are the chances?
So I'd text him, I'm like, how's yours going? And, and I'd send him a picture of me having chemo. And so luckily for Richard, he's in remission and they were able to, get his under control, but mine has gone on. So mine has come back a couple of times since then. So in our relationship, we're artists, we're graphic designers. I think, and Richard really had this idea where he really wanted to bring together people who had cancer and their artwork, because in his life, he was finding there were a lot of people and they did different kinds of artwork. So it was all his brainchild, and I was invited to participate with the 4 other artists, and that includes Richard because he's a potter. So, and he'll have his work there too. So it's all different. It's fiber, artist, sculpture, everything.
So I really want to push that. I really want a lot of people to know about that exhibit and really want to get a lot of people there. So we'll definitely be posting on that and try to get that out nationally. But it makes me think that, I have known you a long time, and you're not a person that puts yourself way out there. And you're going to be touching a lot of people. A lot of people are going to be seeing this, and you're going to affect them. And how does that make you feel?
Well, since this has happened, I initially, I'm a portrait photographer. So I would definitely be the person behind the camera, shooting the person in front of me. Yeah. And I would shoot strangers. I like to go up to people I don't know and see if I can get a portrait of them. That's sort of my art form. But when this happened to me and I started to lose my hair and I started to go through chemo and things like that, I realized that I now was the subject of what was happening. So I had to be the face of what I was going through. I initially thought that other people could wear the heads, but I quickly realized that I had to be the face of this. And it was more sincere and honest for me to do it that way. So I think that going from behind the camera to in front of the camera was an adjustment, but it was the right thing to do at that time, and still is this time, and it still works for me.
Is there a place that you would love to have your pictures exhibited? Is there anything in your head that you're thinking, I'd love to be there?
Yeah, I'd love to be at the Museum of Modern Art, but I don't know if that would ever happen. But I do have an idea that I'd like the artwork to be in cancer centers across the country and internationally. I think people and caregivers who are familiar with what's happening and the changes that someone with cancer goes through appreciate the work on a different level than people who might not be in the midst of it. I think people in the midst of it appreciate it for different reasons. And I think the people that have cancer appreciate it because they realize how difficult it is to come to terms with the changes in your body.
Yeah.
Do you have any one photograph that you you prefer? Not necessarily like, I probably like your children, you can't pick one, but is there one that really stands out to you?
Well, it's hard to pick. Like I sort of separate them into characters. And like I said, some of them I do, and some of them, many of them other people do. And I think out of the ones that people have done for me, one of the first ones that I got in was from a friend of mine that I also went to graduate school with. He sent me two. My friend Steve, he sent me a very tall hat-like construction that was made out of pipe insulation. And that's one of my favorites because it looks so mod. It just has a 60s look to it. And then he also sent me one made out of orange, that's all orange, and it's sort of, you know, strings of, it's a, you know, strings of plastic. I don't know where he got this orange.
That's one of my
stuff.
favorite ones.
And I love that one because it's sculptural. And I think that, you know, everyone does it a different way, and his were very sculptural, and I liked that about them. And they photographed beautifully, and with the one that was orange, I could throw it and we could make different patterns with it, with the shadow on the wall, so I could throw it up and put my arm down really quickly, and it was really interesting. It was like alive. And I like when they have movement to them. And not only that, I think that, you know, people have different ways of solving this problem, and that's what creativity is. It's solving a problem. And I think that I really liked the way he went about trying to solve it. It was different from anyone else's. Mm-hmm. But then I could say that about just about all of them. You know, people have different ways, and there are ones that I've not posted yet that I think are really outstanding. So, you know, I have like 5 to come that I think are really going to be interesting if I can figure out what to wear.
Well, we'll make sure that, you know, everybody, our viewers, have the opportunity to find your website and your Instagram and learn more about the Artoma presentation. So I want to know, and we ask everybody this, what is your prescription for living and aging enthusiastically?
I think that you have to think about, you know, aging, and you have to think about your body. I think about those things separately. Okay, I don't think about my age. Sometimes people ask me how old I am, and I have no idea, and I have to think about it. And I think that's part of it because I'm a person that likes to do things. I'm very active. You know, I've always been artistic and making things. And I think that has broadened my scope and made me think about things very differently. I think as people, it's very easy for us to get stuck in conventions and listen to what other people say and think we need to do this, we need to do that, right? But once you free yourself of that, your brain does amazing things. Your brain can think of great things if you let it. If you stop telling yourself, no, I can't do that, or somebody says that's not the way to do it. There are so many different ways to do things. And I think that's how we should use our minds, figuring out different ways to do things. And through that, I feel like age is sort of irrelevant to me. I'm aging, maybe I'm, you know, but I don't think about it. You know, I feel like I can relate to anyone because I am very open to listening to what people have to say, and I want to hear their stories. And that's a lot. It has a lot to do with getting out of yourself and understanding others.
Right, and you're so mindful.
Yeah, and you know, that really goes along with a theme that other people have talked about, and it's get out of the box. Don't do anything the same that you've ever done it. Just get uncomfortable, because it's the only way to get enthusiastic.
I would say that that's very true. Yeah. I would say that if the idea makes you uncomfortable, it's probably a good idea.
That's great.
Yeah,
I love that.
Yeah, I think so. And if it scares you, if something scares you, well, you know what? It probably is a good idea because it means you're putting yourself out there if it's scaring you. And this frightened me like you wouldn't believe. I didn't want to be the subject of all of these pictures. Now we've got 50 plus. You know, I didn't want that. But again, you know, it was appropriate for what I was doing. And I got over the fear because I felt that I was helping more people, and I got out of myself. It's not all about me.
That's wonderful.
You're definitely making a difference.
I hope so. I hope so. A lot of people. have seen them up at Mass General, and I get feedback. So I'm glad that that they find them amusing, because I just want to bring some joy and levity to people who are going through chemotherapy. And if it does more than that, then that's just gravy.
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
Well, so thank you so much for
Sure.
spending this time with us and sharing your journey. It's one that I'm in awe of, and I know a lot of other people are. Gretchen, go ahead and close her up.
Okay, I'm going to close it up, and thanks so much.
Oh, thank you.